Chapter 17 of the Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 17 Saturday Night. Carrying the parcel lightly under his arm, walking briskly with only the ceaseless shifting of his eyes denoting wariness, Spade went, partly by way of an alley and a narrow court, from his office building to Kearney and Post Streets, where he hailed a passing taxicab. The taxicab carried him to the Pickwick stage terminal in Fifth Street. He checked his parcel at the parcel room there, put the check into a stamped envelope, wrote M.F. Holland and a San Francisco post office box number on the envelope, sealed it, and dropped it into a mailbox. Then he entered another taxicab and was driven to the Alexandria Hotel. Spade went up to Suite 12C and knocked on the door. The door was open when he had knocked a second time by a small, fair-haired girl in a shimmering yellow dressing gown, a small girl whose face was white and dim, and who clung desperately to the inner knob with both hands and gasped, "You're Mr. Spade?" Spade said, "Yes," and caught her as she swayed. Her body arched back over his arm, and her head dropped straight back, so that her short, fair hair hung down from her scalp, and her slender throat was a firm curve from chin to chest. Spade slid his supporting arm higher up her back and bent to get his other arm under her knees, but she stirred, resisting, and between parted lips that barely moved, blurred words came, "No, me wa." Spade made her walk. He kicked the door shut, and he walked her up and down the green-carpeted room from wall to wall. One of his arms around her small body, that hand under her armpit, his other hand gripping her other arm, held her erect when she stumbled, checked her swaying, kept urging her forward, but made her tottering legs bear all of her weight they could bear. They walked across and across the floor, the girl faltering with incoordinate steps, Spade surely on the balls of his feet, with balance unaffected by her staggering. Her face was chalk white and eyeless, his sullen, with eyes hardened to watch everywhere at once. He talked to her monotonously. "That's the stuff. Left, right, that's the stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4, now we turn." He shook her as they turned from the wall. "Now back again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your head up. That's the stuff. Good girl. Left, right. Now we turn again." He shook her again. "Walk. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the girl. Now we go around." He shook her more roughly and increased their pace. "That's the trick. Left, right. Speed it up. We're in a hurry. 1, 2, 3. She shuddered and swallowed audibly. Spade began to chafe her arm inside, and he bent his mouth nearer her ear. "That's fine. You're doing fine. 1, 2, 3, 4. Faster. That's it. Step. Pick them up and lay them down. That's the stuff. What'd they do, dope you? The same stuff they gave me?" Her eyelids twitched up then for an instant over dulled golden-brown eyes, and she managed to say all of "yes," except the final consonant. They walked the floor, the girl almost trotting now to keep up with Spade, slapping and kneading her flesh through yellow silk with both hands, talking while his eyes remained hard and aloof and watchful. Left, right, turn. That's the girl. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep the chin up. That's the stuff." Her lids lifted again, a bare fraction of an inch, and under them her eyes moved dully from side to side. "That's fine," he said, crisply dropping his monotone. "Keep them open. Open them wide. He shook her. She moaned in protest, but her lids went further up, though her eyes still were without inner light. He raised his hand and slapped her cheek half a dozen times in quick succession. She moaned again and tried to break away from him. His arm held her, swept her along beside him from wall to wall. "Keep walking," he ordered in a harsh voice, and then, "Who are you?" Her Rhea Gutman was thick but intelligible. "The daughter?"
"Yes."
Now she was no farther from the final consonant than sh. "Where's Bridget?" She twisted convulsively around in his arms and caught at one of his hands with both of hers. He pulled his hand away quickly and looked at it. Across its back was a thin red scratch, an inch and a half or more in length. "What the hell?" he growled and examined her hands. Her left hand was empty. In her right hand, when he opened it, lay a 3-inch jade-headed steel bouquet pin. "What the hell?" he growled again and held the pin up in front of her eyes. When she saw the pin she whimpered and opened her dressing gown. She pushed aside the cream-colored pajama coat under it and showed him her body below her left breast, white flesh crisscrossed with thin red lines, dotted with tiny red dots, where the pin had scratched and punctured it.
"To keep me awake, to walk till you came. She said you'd come. You were so long coming."
She swayed. Spade tightened his arm around her and said, "Walk." She fought against the arm, squirming around to face him again.
"No, tell you. Sleep. You go to her."
"Bridget?" he demanded.
"Yes. Took her. Burlingame. 26 Ancho. Hurry. Too late."
Her head fell over on her shoulder. Spade pushed her head up roughly. "Who took her? Your father?"
"Yes. Wilmer. Cairo."
She writhed, and her eyelids twitched but did not open.
"Kill her."
Her head fell over again, and again he pushed it up. "Who shot Jacoby?" She did not seem to hear the question. She tried pitifully to hold her head up, to open her eyes. She mumbled,
"Go. She—"
He shook her brutally. "Stay awake till the doctor comes." Fear opened her eyes and pushed for a moment the cloudiness from her face.
"No, no," she cried thickly. "Father, kill me. Swear you won't. He'd know I did for her. Promise you won't. Sleep all right morning."
He shook her again. "You're sure you can sleep it off all right?"
"Yeah."
Her head fell down. "Where's your bed?" She tried to raise a hand, but the effort had become too much for her before the hand pointed at anything except the floor. With a sigh of a tired child, she let her whole body relax and crumple. Spade caught her up in his arms, scooped her up as she sank, and holding her easily against his chest, went to the nearest of the 3 doors. He turned the knob far enough to release the catch, pushed the door open with his foot, and went into a passageway that ran past an open bathroom door to a bedroom. He looked into the bathroom, saw it was empty, and carried the girl into the bedroom. Nobody was there, but the clothing that was visible and the things on the chiffonier said it was a man's room. Spade carried the girl back to the green-carpeted room and tried the opposite door. Through it he passed into another passageway, past another empty bathroom, and into a bedroom that was feminine in its accessories. He turned back the bedclothes and laid the girl on the bed, removed her slippers, raised her a little to slide the yellow dressing-gown off, fixed a pillow under her head, and put the covers up over her. Then he opened the room's 2 windows and stood with his back to them, staring at the sleeping girl. Her breathing was heavy but not troubled. He frowned and looked around, working his lips together. Twilight was dimming the room. He stood there in the weakening light for perhaps 5 minutes. Finally, he shook his thick sloping shoulders impatiently and went out, leaving the outer door unlocked. Spade went to the Pacific Telephone and Telegraph Company's Powell Street station and called Davenport 2020. "Emergency hospital, please." "Hello. There's a girl in suite 12C at the Alexandria Hotel who has been drugged." "Yes, you'd better send somebody to take a look at her." "Yes, this is Mr. Hooper of the Alexandria." He put the receiver on its prong and laughed. He called another number and said, "Hello, Frank. This is Sam Spade. Can you let me have a car to go down the peninsula right away? Just a couple of hours. And give me a driver that will keep his mouth shut, will you?" "Right." Have him pick me up at John's, Ellis Street, as soon as he can make it." He called another number, his own office's, held the receiver to his ear for a little while without saying anything, and replaced it on its hook. He went to John's grill, asked the waiter to hurry his order of chops, baked potato, and sliced tomatoes, ate hurriedly, and was smoking a cigarette with his coffee, when a thick-set youngish man, with a plaid cap set askew above pale eyes and a tough, cheery face, came into the grill and to his table. "All set, Mr. Spade. She's full of gas and raring to go." "Swell." Spade emptied his cup and went out with the thick-set man. "Know where Ancho Avenue or Road or Boulevard is in Burlingame?" "Nope, but if she's there, we can find her." "Let's do that," Spade said as he sat beside the chauffeur in a dark Cadillac sedan. 26 is the number we want, and the sooner the better, but we don't want to pull up at the front door." "Correct." They rode a half-dozen blocks. The chauffeur said, "Your partner got knocked off, didn't he?" "Uh-huh." The chauffeur clucked. "She's a tough racket." "Well, hack drivers don't live forever." "Maybe that's right," the thick-set man conceded. "But just the same, it'll always be a surprise to me if I don't." Spade stared ahead at nothing, and thereafter, until the chauffeur became tired of making conversation, replied with uninterested yeses and nos. At a drugstore in Burlingame, the chauffeur learned how to reach Ancho Avenue. 10 minutes later, he stopped the car near a dark corner, turned off the lights, and waved his hand at the block ahead. "There she is," he said. "She ought to be on the other side, maybe the third or fourth house." Spade said, "Right," and got out of the car. "Keep the engine going. We might have to leave in a hurry." He crossed the street and went up the other side. Night had settled. Far ahead, a lone street light burned. Warmer lights dotted the night on either side, where houses were spaced half a dozen to a block. A high, thin moon was cold and feeble as the distant streetlight. A radio droned through the open window of a house on the other side of the street. In front of the second house from the corner, Spade halted. On one of the gate-posts that were massive out of all proportion to the fence flanking them, a 2 and a 6 of pale metal caught what light there was. A square white card was nailed above them. Putting his face close to the card, Spade could see it was a "For Sale or Rent" sign. There was no gate between the posts. Spade went up the cement walk to the house. He stood still on the walk at the foot of the porch steps for a long moment. No sound came from the house. The house was dark except for another pale square card on its door. Spade went up to the door and listened. He could hear nothing. He tried to look through the glass of the door. There was no curtain to keep his gaze out, but inner darkness. He tiptoed to a window and then to another. They, like the door, were uncurtained except by inner darkness. He tried both windows. They were locked. He tried the door. It was locked. He left the porch and, stepping carefully over unfamiliar ground, walked through weeds around the house. The side windows were too high to be reached. The back door and the one back window he could reach were locked. Spade went back to the gate-post and, cupping the flame between his hands, held his lighter up to the "For Sale or Rent" sign. It bore the printed name and address of a San Mateo real estate dealer, and a line penciled in blue, "Key at 31." Spade went back to the sedan and asked the chauffeur, "Got a flashlight?" "Sure." He gave it to Spade. "Can I give you a hand at anything?" "Maybe." Spade got into the sedan. "We'll ride up to number 31. You can use your lights." Number 31 was a square gray house across the street from, but a little farther up than, 26. Lights glowed in its downstairs windows. Spade went up on the porch and rang the bell. A dark-haired girl of 14 or 15 opened the door. Spade, bowing and smiling, said, "I'd like to get the key to number 26. "I'll call Papa," she said, and went back into the house calling, "Papa!" A plump, red-faced man, bald-headed and heavily mustached, appeared, carrying a newspaper. Spade said, "I'd like to get the key to 26. The plump man looked doubtful. He said, "The lights are not on. You couldn't see anything." Spade patted his pocket. "I have a flashlight." The plump man looked more doubtful. He cleared his throat uneasily and crumpled the newspaper in his hand. Spade showed the man one of his business cards, put it back in his pocket, and said in a low voice, "We got a tip there might be something hidden over there." The plump man's face and voice were eager. "Wait a minute," he said. "I'll go over with you." When he came back a moment later, he carried a brass key attached to a yellow and red tag. Spade beckoned to the chauffeur as they passed the sedan, and the chauffeur joined them. "Anybody been looking at the house lately?" Spade asked. "Not that I know of," the plump man replied. "Nobody's been to me for the key in a couple of months." The plump man marched ahead with the key until they had gone up on the porch. Then he thrust it into Spade's hand, mumbled, "Here you are," and stepped aside. Spade unlocked the door and pushed it open. There was silence and darkness. Holding the flashlight, dark in his left hand, Spade went in. The chauffeur came close behind him, and then, at a little distance, the plump man followed them. They searched the house from bottom to top, cautiously at first, then, finding nothing, boldly. The house was empty unmistakably, and there was nothing to show that it had been visited in weeks. Spade, saying, "That's all, thanks," and "Good night," left the sedan in front of the Alexandria. He went into the hotel to the desk where a tall young man with a dark grave face said, "Good evening, Mr. Spade." "Good evening." Spade drew the young man to one end of the desk. "These Gutmans up in 12C, are they in?" The young man replied, "No," darting a quick, sharp glance at Spade. Then he looked away, hesitated, looked at Spade again, and murmured, "A funny thing happened a couple of hours ago. Somebody called the emergency hospital and told them there was a sick girl up there." "And there wasn't?" "Oh, no, there was nobody up there. They went out earlier in the evening." Spade said, "Well, these practical jokers have to have their fun. Thanks." He went to the telephone booth, called a number, and said, "Hello, Mrs. Perrine? Is Effie there? Yes, please. Thanks. Hello, Angel. What's the good word? Fine, fine. Hold it. I'll be out in 20 minutes. Right." Half an hour later, Spade rang the doorbell of a 2-story brick house in 7th Avenue. Effie Perrine opened the door. Her boyish face was tired and smiling. "Hello, boss," she said. "Enter." Then she said in a low voice, "If Ma says anything to you, Sam, be nice to her. She's all up in the air." Spade grinned reassuringly and patted her shoulder. She put her hands on his arm. "Miss O'Shaughnessy?" "No," he growled. "I ran into a plant." "Are you sure it was her voice?" "Yes." He made an unpleasant face. "Well, it was hooey." She took him into a bright living room, sighed, and slumped down on one end of a Chesterfield, smiling cheerfully up at him through her weariness. He sat beside her and asked, "Everything went okay? Nothing said about the bundle?" "Nothing. I told them what you told me to tell them, and they seemed to take it for granted that the telephone call had had something to do with him, and that you were off trying to clear it up." "Dundee there?" "No, Hoff and Ogar, and some others I didn't know. I talked to the captain, too." "They took you down to the hall?" "Oh, yes, and they asked me loads of questions, but it was all, you know, routine." Spade rubbed his palms together. "Swell," he said, and then frowned. "Though I guess they'll think up plenty outside of routine to put to me when we meet. That damned Dundee will anyway, and Brian." He shrugged. "Anybody, you know, outside of the coppers come around?" "Yes." She sat up straight. "That boy, the one who brought the message from Gutman, was there. He didn't come in, but the police left the corridor door open when they came in, and I saw him standing there." "You didn't say anything?" "Oh, no, you had said not to, so I didn't pay any attention to him, and the next time I looked he was gone." Spade grinned at her. Damn lucky for you, sister, that the coppers got there first." "Why?" "He's a bad egg, that lad. Poison. Was the dead man Jacoby?" "Yes." He pressed her hands and stood up. "I'm going to run along. You'd better hit the hay. You're all in." She rose. "Sam, what is—" He stopped her words with a hand over her mouth. "Keep your questions till Monday," he said. "I want to sneak out before your mother catches me and gives me hell for dragging her lamb through gutters." Midnight was a few minutes away when Spade reached his home. He put his key into the street door's lock. Heels clicked rapidly on the sidewalk behind him. He let go the key and wheeled. Bridget O'Shaughnessy ran up the steps to him. She put her arms around him and hung on him, panting, "Oh, I thought you'd never come." Her face was wan, distraught, shaken by the tremors that shook her from head to foot. With the hand not supporting her, he felt for the key again, opened the door, and half lifted her inside. "You've been waiting?" he asked. "Yes." Panting spaced her words. "In a doorway up the street." "Make it all right?" he asked. "Or shall I carry you up?" She shook her head against his shoulder. "I'll be all right when I get where I can sit down." They rode up to Spade's floor in the elevator and went around to his apartment. She left his arm and stood beside him, panting, both hands to her breast, while he unlocked his door. He switched on the passageway light. They went in. He shut the door, and with his arm around her again, half carried her toward the living room. When they were within a step of the living room door, the living room light went on. The girl cried out and clung to Spade. Just inside the living room door, Fat Gutman stood smiling benevolently at them. The undersized youth Gutman had called Wilmer came out of the kitchen behind them. Black pistols were gigantic in his small hands. Cairo came out of the bathroom. He, too, had a pistol. Gutman said, "Well, sir, we're all here as you can see. Now let's come in and sit down and be comfortable and talk." End of chapter 17.